The rain hammered down on the cracked pavement of Fifth Avenue, turning the sidewalk into a river of neon reflections. Marcus and Maya huddled beneath a torn awning outside a closed boutique, their thin jackets doing little to stop the cold from seeping into their bones. At 17, the twins had been surviving on these streets for 8 months, ever since their grandmother passed away and they aged out of the overcrowded foster system. Tonight felt colder than usual, or perhaps they were just tired of being cold. Marcus spotted it first. A sleek black leather wallet lay against the curb, partially submerged in a puddle. The rain had pushed it there from somewhere up the block, and it sat gleaming under the street light like a dark promise. He nudged Maya with his elbow, then pointed. She followed his gaze and saw it too. For a moment, neither of them moved. They both knew what finding a wallet meant on these streets. It could mean food for a week. It could mean a warm night in a cheap motel. It could mean survival. Maya was the first to step forward. Water splashed around her worn sneakers as she bent down and retrieved the wallet. It was heavy, expensive, the kind of thing that probably cost more than everything they owned combined. Her fingers trembled as she opened it, not from the cold but from anticipation mixed with dread. Inside, she found what she expected: credit cards with embossed names, a driver's license, and a thick stack of crisp $100 bills. Her breath caught in her throat. Marcus peered over her shoulder, his eyes widening. He counted silently, his lips moving. $2,000. Maybe more. Enough to change everything. They could eat real meals. They could find a place to stay for a month. They could buy new clothes for job interviews. The possibilities flooded through his mind like the rain flooding the gutters. His stomach growled, reminding him that they hadn't eaten since yesterday morning when a kind woman at the bakery had given them day-old croissants. But then Maya looked at the license. The woman in the photo was elegant, with silver hair swept back and intelligent eyes that seemed to look right through the camera. Her name was Catherine Westbrook. The address listed was in the prestigious Upper East Side, one of those buildings with doormen in uniforms and marble lobbies. This woman had everything. She wouldn't miss this money. She probably spent more than this on a single dinner. The rational part of Maya's brain whispered these justifications, trying to make it easier. Yet something stopped her from pocketing the cash. Maybe it was the way their grandmother had raised them, always insisting that character was the only thing poverty couldn't take from you. Maybe it was the memory of her voice saying that how you treat people when you have nothing says everything about who you really are. Maya looked at Marcus, and in his eyes, she saw the same internal battle. They were hungry. They were desperate. But they were also still themselves. Marcus spoke first, his voice barely audible over the rain. We should return it. The words felt strange coming out of his mouth, almost foolish. Every survival instinct they had developed on the street screamed against this decision. But Maya nodded slowly, relief washing over her features. They had made their choice. They would find Catherine Westbrook and give back what belonged to her, even though it might cost them everything. The twins pulled their jackets tighter and began walking uptown, the wallet safely tucked in Maya's inside pocket. The rain continued to fall, and the city lights blurred through the downpour. Neither of them could have imagined that this single decision, made in a moment of desperate integrity, would transform their lives in ways they never dreamed possible. They were just two homeless kids doing what they believed was right, unaware that Catherine Westbrook was not just any woman, but someone who would soon change everything they thought they knew about kindness, opportunity, and the power of one honest choice. The doorman at the Bellamy building looked at Marcus and Maya as if they had crawled out of the sewers, which wasn't far from the truth. Water dripped from their clothes onto the pristine marble floor, forming small puddles that seemed to offend him personally. His uniform was immaculate, all brass buttons and sharp creases, and his expression made it clear that people like them didn't belong in a place like this. He stepped forward, blocking their path with his body, one hand already reaching for his phone, probably to call security. Maya pulled out the wallet and held it up, her voice steady despite her nerves. We found this. It belongs to Catherine Westbrook. We just want to return it. The doorman's eyes narrowed with suspicion. He had seen every scam in the book during his 20 years at this building. Street kids with stolen property claiming they found it was a classic move. They probably lifted it from her purse and now wanted a reward. He snatched the wallet from Maya's hand, examined it briefly, then told them to wait outside while he verified their story. The twins stood in the rain for 15 minutes that felt like hours. Other residents passed by, giving them wide berths and uncomfortable glances. A woman in a fur coat actually clutched her purse closer when she walked past. Marcus felt anger rising in his chest, the familiar burn of being judged, of being dismissed as less than human because he didn't have a home. But Maya grabbed his hand and squeezed, a silent reminder to stay calm. They had come this far. They could wait a little longer. When the doorman finally returned, his demeanor had completely changed. His face was pale, and he actually stammered an apology as he held the door open for them. "Mrs. Westbrook will see you now. Please, follow me." They rode the elevator to the penthouse in uncomfortable silence, watching the numbers climb higher than either of them had ever been in a building. The doorman kept stealing glances at them, as if trying to reconcile what he had assumed with whatever Catherine Westbrook had told him. The elevator opened directly into an apartment that took Maya's breath away. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Central Park, and the space was filled with art that even she, with no formal education, recognized as important. Everything was elegant yet comfortable, expensive yet somehow warm. And standing in the center of it all was Catherine Westbrook herself, exactly like her photo but more commanding in person. She was in her 60s, dressed in a simple cashmere sweater and slacks, but she carried herself with an authority that filled the room. Catherine's eyes went immediately to the twins, taking in their soaked clothes, their thin frames, their cautious expressions. Her face remained neutral, impossible to read. She thanked the doorman and dismissed him with a gentle nod. Only when the elevator doors closed did she speak, her voice cultured but not cold. "You found my wallet." It wasn't a question. Maya nodded and explained how they had discovered it on Fifth Avenue, leaving out the part about their internal debate, about how hungry they were, about how much they had wanted to keep the money. Catherine listened without interrupting, her gaze never leaving their faces. When Maya finished, silence filled the apartment, broken only by the rain against the windows. Marcus shifted uncomfortably, wondering if this had been a mistake. Maybe she would accuse them of stealing it. Maybe she would call the police anyway. Rich people didn't always believe that poor people could be honest. His muscles tensed, ready to run if necessary. But Catherine did something unexpected. She smiled, and it transformed her entire face. "Do you know what was in that wallet?" she asked. "Besides the obvious?" The twins shook their heads. "Irreplaceable photographs. My late husband's last gift to me before he passed. A letter from my daughter. Things that money could never replace." Her voice cracked slightly, revealing emotion beneath her composed exterior. "I've had people work for me for years who would have kept the cash and thrown away everything else. But you two brought it all back." She walked to a side table and picked up the wallet, opening it to show them that everything was intact. Then she looked at them with an intensity that made Marcus feel seen, truly seen, for the first time in months. "I'm going to ask you something, and I want you to be honest with me. When you found this wallet, did you consider keeping the money?" Maya's first instinct was to lie, to tell this powerful woman what she probably wanted to hear. But something in Catherine's eyes told her that honesty was the only acceptable answer. "Yes," Maya admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "We're homeless. We haven't eaten in over a day. We needed that money more than we've needed anything in a long time." Tears threatened to spill down her cheeks, but she held them back. "But our grandmother raised us better than that. She always said that who we are matters more than what we have. So we brought it back." Marcus nodded, adding quietly, "Even though it was the hardest thing we've ever done." Catherine was quiet for a long moment, studying them both. Then she did something that stunned them completely. She opened her arms and pulled them both into an embrace. The twins stood frozen, unsure how to respond. They couldn't remember the last time someone had hugged them, had touched them with kindness rather than shoving them away. Catherine held them as they finally let their tears fall, as weeks of fear and hunger and loneliness came pouring out. "You two," she whispered, "are exactly the kind of people this world needs more of. And I'm going to make sure you get the chance to show everyone what you're capable of." Catherine released the twins and stepped back, her own eyes glistening with unshed tears. She gestured toward a plush sofa near the windows. "Sit. Please. Let me get you some dry clothes and something to eat." Before they could protest, she was already moving toward another room, calling back, "Don't even think about leaving. You're not going anywhere tonight." Maya and Marcus exchanged uncertain glances but sank into the sofa, which felt like sitting on a cloud compared to the concrete and cardboard they were used to. Catherine returned with an armful of clothes, sweatpants, hoodies, thick socks, all brand new with tags still attached. These were supposed to be donations anyway, she explained, though the twins suspected she was lying kindly. "There's a bathroom down that hall. Go change, take hot showers if you want. Take your time. I'll have food ready when you're done." The twins hesitated, still not quite believing this was real. But the promise of a hot shower was too tempting to refuse. They had been cold for so long. 30 minutes later, clean and warm for the first time in months, Marcus and Maya returned to find the dining table set with more food than they had seen in weeks. Grilled chicken, roasted vegetables, fresh bread, salad, and pasta. Catherine was just setting down a pitcher of lemonade. "I wasn't sure what you'd like," she said simply. "So I made a bit of everything." The twins tried to eat slowly, tried to maintain some dignity, but hunger won out. Catherine watched them with a mixture of sadness and determination, saying nothing until they had satisfied the worst of their appetite. As they finally slowed down, Catherine poured them each a glass of lemonade and sat across from them. "I want to tell you a story," she began, her voice taking on a different quality, something vulnerable and raw. "When I was 19 years old, I was exactly where you are now. Homeless. Desperate. Alone." The twins looked up in shock. This elegant woman in her penthouse apartment had been homeless? It seemed impossible. But Catherine's expression told them she wasn't lying. "My parents died in a car accident when I was 18, she continued, staring out at the rain-streaked windows. "I had no other family. No money. The state took everything to pay their debts. I ended up on the streets of Chicago in the middle of winter, sleeping in doorways, digging through trash for food. I was so hungry, so cold, so scared all the time." Her voice shook slightly at the memory. "One night, I found a purse. A designer purse, left on a bench in a park. It had $800 in it." Marcus leaned forward, completely absorbed in her story. "Did you keep it?" he asked. Catherine smiled sadly. "I tried to. God, I tried. I held that money in my hands and told myself that whoever lost it could afford to replace it. That I needed it more. That survival justified anything." She paused, taking a sip of her own lemonade. "But I couldn't do it. Something in me, some stubborn piece of who I had been raised to be, wouldn't let me. So I found the address on the driver's license and returned it." "What happened?" Maya asked, her voice hushed. Catherine's eyes brightened with the memory. The woman who answered the door was named Eleanor Montgomery. She was a businesswoman, a real estate developer who had built her empire from nothing. "When I gave her back the purse, she asked me the same question I asked you. Did I consider keeping the money? I told her the truth. I was homeless and desperate, and yes, I had wanted to keep it more than anything." Catherine stood and walked to the window, her reflection ghostly in the dark glass. "Eleanor invited me in, just like I invited you in tonight. She fed me, clothed me, and then she said something I'll never forget. Integrity is the foundation of everything worth building. You have that foundation. Now let me help you build the rest." The twins sat motionless, understanding dawning on their faces. "She gave you a chance," Maya whispered. "More than a chance," Catherine corrected, turning back to them. "She gave me a job in her company. Started me at the bottom, answering phones and filing papers. But she also paid for me to finish my education. She mentored me, believed in me when no one else did. When she retired 15 years later, she sold me the company at a fraction of its worth, on terms I could actually afford. Everything I have, everything I am, started because I made the same choice you two made tonight." Marcus felt his throat tighten. "Why are you telling us this?" Catherine came back to the table and sat down, her gaze intense and purposeful. "Because Eleanor made me promise something before she died. She made me promise that if I ever encountered young people with that same integrity, that same fundamental goodness despite their circumstances, I would do for them what she did for me. I've been waiting 30 years for this moment. I've helped many people, donated millions to charities, but I've never found anyone who reminded me of that scared 19-year-old girl until tonight." "What are you saying?" Maya asked, afraid to hope, afraid to believe what seemed to be happening. Catherine reached across the table and took both their hands in hers. "I'm saying that starting tomorrow, your lives are going to change. I'm saying that I want to invest in you the way Eleanor invested in me. I'm saying that you two just passed a test that most people in this city would fail, and I'm going to make sure that your integrity, your character, is rewarded in ways you can't yet imagine." Tears streamed openly down both twins' faces now. "We don't understand," Marcus managed. "Why would you do this for us? You don't even know us." Catherine squeezed their hands gently. "I know the most important thing about you. I know that when you had nothing, when you were at your lowest point, you still chose to do the right thing. That tells me everything I need to know. Character isn't what you do when people are watching. It's what you do when you're alone, hungry, and desperate, and no one would ever know if you made the wrong choice. You two have character." The twins couldn't speak, overwhelmed by emotion and disbelief. Catherine stood again, this time pulling out her phone. "Tonight, you're staying here. Tomorrow morning, we're going shopping for proper clothes. Then we're meeting with my lawyer and my educational consultant. We're going to figure out exactly what you two need to build the lives you deserve. And I promise you this, if you're willing to work hard, willing to learn, willing to trust me the way I once trusted Eleanor, I will open every door I possibly can for you. Maya found her voice finally. I don't know what to say. Thank you doesn't seem like enough. Catherine smiled warmly. Then don't say anything tonight. Just rest. Just be warm and safe and fed. Tomorrow, we start building your future. But tonight, you've earned the right to simply be two kids who don't have to worry about where they'll sleep or what they'll eat. Tonight, you're home. The morning sun broke through the clouds, flooding Catherine's penthouse with golden light that seemed almost symbolic. Marcus woke up on a sofa that had cradled him through the best sleep he'd had in 8 months, momentarily confused about where he was. Then the previous night's events came rushing back, and he wondered if it had all been an elaborate dream. But the smell of coffee and fresh pastries wafting from the kitchen told him it was real. Maya was already awake, sitting at the dining table with Catherine, both nursing mugs of coffee and talking quietly. Catherine looked up as Marcus approached, her smile genuine and warm. Good morning. I hope you slept well. He nodded, still somewhat shy in her presence. She pushed a plate of croissants and fruit toward him. Eat. We have a big day ahead of us. As they ate breakfast together, Catherine outlined her plan. First, they would visit her personal attorney to establish legal guardianship since the twins were still minors. Then they would go shopping for clothes suitable for school and interviews. Finally, they would meet with an educational consultant to assess their current academic standing and create a plan to get them back on track. The twins listened in stunned silence. School. The word felt foreign to them now. They had dropped out when their grandmother died, focusing entirely on survival. The idea that they could return, that someone believed they could still have normal lives, seemed impossible. I know it sounds overwhelming, Catherine said gently, reading their expressions perfectly. But you don't have to do this alone. I'll be with you every step of the way. Just like Eleanor was with me. The attorney's office was in a gleaming tower downtown, all glass and steel and serious-faced people in expensive suits. James Morrison had been Catherine's lawyer for 20 years, and he handled the guardianship paperwork with remarkable efficiency. He asked the twins questions about their situation, their history, their biological parents who had disappeared when they were toddlers. Marcus and Maya answered honestly, laying bare the painful details of their young lives. James never judged, never looked at them with pity, only with professional kindness. By noon, the paperwork was filed. Catherine Westbrook was officially their legal guardian. Next came the shopping, and this was where the twins truly began to understand the magnitude of what was happening. Catherine took them to stores they had only ever seen from the outside, places where a single shirt cost more than they used to spend on food in a week. She had them try on everything, jeans and slacks, sweaters and button-downs, shoes that actually fit properly. Maya felt tears threaten when she looked in the mirror and saw herself looking normal, looking like any other teenager instead of a homeless kid. Marcus stood straighter, his shoulders pulled back, as if the clothes themselves were giving him back his dignity. Catherine noticed their reactions and pulled them aside in a quiet corner of the store. I want you to understand something important. These clothes don't make you better people. They don't change who you are inside. You were just as valuable yesterday in your worn-out jackets as you are today in these new clothes. But the world judges people by appearances, and I want to make sure that when people see you, they see your potential, not your past circumstances. This is about removing barriers, not changing your essence. The educational consultant, Dr. Patricia Chen, met them at a quiet cafe that afternoon. She was a woman in her 40s with kind eyes and an easy manner that put the twins at ease almost immediately. She asked them about their education, what subjects they had enjoyed, where they had struggled. Maya admitted she loved reading and writing but had always struggled with math. Marcus confessed that he was good with numbers but had terrible handwriting and hated English class. Dr. Chen listened carefully, taking notes, asking follow-up questions that showed she was truly interested. After an hour of conversation, Dr. Chen closed her notebook and looked at Catherine. They're both bright. Very bright. With intensive tutoring and the right support, I see no reason why they can't catch up to their peers within a year. Maya should consider college prep programs for liberal arts. Marcus has an analytical mind that would serve him well in business or engineering. The twins exchanged glances, hardly daring to believe what they were hearing. College. That word had been erased from their vocabulary months ago, relegated to an impossible dream. Now someone was talking about it as if it were inevitable. Catherine nodded approvingly. I want them in the best private school in the city by next semester. Whatever it takes to get them there, make it happen. Dr. Chen smiled. I have connections at several excellent institutions. The Dalton School has a scholarship program for exceptional students from challenging backgrounds. With your recommendation, Catherine, and their obvious potential, I think we could make a compelling case. The twins listened to these adults casually planning their future, and it felt both wonderful and terrifying. Everything was happening so fast. That evening, back at the penthouse, Catherine sat them down for what she called a serious conversation. I need you both to understand what I'm offering you and what I'm asking of you in return. Her tone was businesslike but not unkind. I'm going to provide you with every opportunity one can: housing, education, mentorship, connections. But I cannot and will not do the work for you. You will study hard. You will show up every day, even when it's difficult. You will treat everyone with respect. You will make mistakes, because everyone does, but you will learn from them. This is not charity. This is an investment in two young people who showed me they have character. Do you understand? Marcus spoke first, his voice strong. We understand. We won't let you down. Maya added, you're giving us a chance we never thought we'd have. We'll work harder than anyone. We promise. Catherine's expression softened. I know you will. And I want you to know that I'm not expecting perfection. I'm expecting effort. I'm expecting honesty. I'm expecting you to be the same people who returned my wallet even though you were desperate. That's all I need. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. The twins moved into a comfortable two-bedroom apartment that Catherine owned in a safe neighborhood, close to where she lived so she could check on them regularly. They met with tutors every day, working to fill the gaps in their education. They practiced for interviews at Dalton. They ate regular meals, slept in real beds, and slowly began to look less like scared, hunted animals and more like normal teenagers. But the transformation wasn't just physical. Marcus found himself laughing again, something he had forgotten how to do. Maya started writing in a journal Catherine had given her, pouring out all the emotions she had bottled up during their time on the streets. They both began to dream again, to imagine futures that extended beyond the next meal, the next safe place to sleep. Catherine visited them often, sometimes bringing dinner, sometimes just sitting and talking about her own journey, sharing lessons she had learned over decades of building her business. One night, about a month after they had found the wallet, Maya asked the question that had been bothering her. Why us? I mean, I know you explained about Eleanor and your promise, but there must be thousands of homeless kids in this city. What made us so special? Catherine considered the question carefully before answering. Honesty, even when it costs you something. Integrity, even when no one is watching. These aren't common traits, Maya. Most people do the right thing when it's convenient or when they'll be rewarded. You two did it when you had every reason not to. That kind of character is rare and precious. She paused, then continued. But I'll tell you something else. When Eleanor helped me, she told me that kindness creates ripples. Every person you help goes on to help others. She helped me, I've helped hundreds of people through my foundation and my work, and now I'm helping you too. Someday, when you're successful and secure, you'll help someone else. Maybe not in exactly this way, but you'll pass on what you've received. That's how we change the world. Not through grand gestures, but through choosing to lift up one person at a time. The twins absorbed this wisdom, understanding that they were part of something larger than themselves. They weren't just two kids who got lucky. They were links in a chain of kindness that stretched back decades and would hopefully continue long into the future. As they lay in their beds that night, in their safe apartment with full stomachs and warm blankets, both Marcus and Maya thought about the wallet, about that rainy night that had changed everything. They had made the right choice, and the universe had rewarded them beyond their wildest dreams. 6 months later, Marcus and Maya stood in front of Dalton School wearing crisp uniforms, their backpacks loaded with new supplies, their hearts pounding with nervous excitement. They had passed their entrance exams, secured their scholarships, and were about to start their first day at one of the most prestigious schools in New York City. Catherine stood beside them, not hovering but present, offering silent support. You ready? She asked quietly. The twins looked at each other, then back at her, and nodded. They were as ready as they would ever be. The first weeks were brutally hard. The other students came from wealthy families, had attended private schools their entire lives, and seemed to speak a language of privilege that Marcus and Maya didn't understand. They struggled with advanced coursework, felt out of place in discussions about summer homes and European vacations, and fought daily against the feeling that they didn't belong. There were moments when Marcus wanted to quit, when Maya cried in frustration over assignments that seemed impossible. But Catherine was always there, reminding them that struggle was part of growth, that Eleanor had believed in her when she felt just as overwhelmed. Slowly, things began to change. A history teacher named Mr. Reynolds noticed Marcus's analytical mind and encouraged him to join the debate team. Maya's English teacher, impressed by an essay about homelessness, recommended her for the school literary magazine. They found allies in unexpected places: a girl named Sophie who sat with Maya at lunch after noticing she ate alone, a boy named James who became Marcus's lab partner and friend. Not everyone was kind, but enough people were that the twins began to feel less like outsiders and more like students who belonged. The debate team became Marcus's passion. He discovered that his experiences on the streets had given him unique perspectives on social issues, and his natural charisma made him a powerful speaker. His first tournament, arguing about housing policy, brought tears to the eyes of several judges. One told him afterward, "In 20 years of judging debates, I've never heard someone speak with such authority and compassion about poverty. Where did you learn to do that?" Marcus simply smiled and said, "I lived it." Maya's writing flourished in ways she never anticipated. Her essay about homelessness was published in the school magazine, and then, to her shock, was picked up by a local newspaper. Letters poured in from readers who were moved by her story. A woman who ran a shelter for homeless youth reached out, asking if Maya would consider speaking to the teenagers there about hope and resilience. Catherine encouraged her to do it, and that first speaking engagement led to others. Maya discovered she had a voice that people wanted to hear. As the school year progressed, the twins not only caught up to their peers academically but began to excel. Marcus made the honor roll for the first time in his life. Maya won a regional writing competition. Their teachers stopped seeing them as charity cases and started seeing them as genuinely talented students with bright futures. The transformation was complete not because they had stopped being who they were, but because they had been given the opportunity to become who they were always meant to be. Catherine watched their progress with the pride of a parent, though she was careful never to push them beyond what they were ready for. She attended Marcus's debates and read every piece Maya wrote. She celebrated their victories and comforted them through their defeats. On the first anniversary of the night they found her wallet, she took them to dinner at an elegant restaurant overlooking the city. As they sat together, she raised her glass in a toast. To integrity, to second chances, and to the beginning of something beautiful. But the evening held one more surprise. As dessert arrived, Catherine pulled out a folder and slid it across the table. "I want to show you something." Inside were college brochures: Harvard, Yale, Columbia, NYU. The twins looked at her in confusion. "It's too early for this," Marcus said. "We're still in our junior year." Catherine smiled mysteriously. "I know. But I want you to start thinking about where you want to go, what you want to study, who you want to become. Because you're going to get there. Both of you." Maya flipped through the brochures, her hands shaking slightly. "These schools cost a fortune." Catherine's smile widened. "They do. And you'll both apply for every scholarship and grant available. But whatever isn't covered, I'll handle. That's part of the promise I made to Eleanor, and it's the promise I'm making to you. You focus on becoming the best versions of yourselves. Let me worry about the finances." The twins couldn't speak, overcome once again by the generosity of this woman who had changed their lives. As they left the restaurant that night, walking through the same streets where they had once slept in doorways, Marcus and Maya marveled at how different everything looked now. The city hadn't changed, but they had. They were no longer invisible, no longer desperate, no longer without hope. They were students with dreams, teenagers with futures, young people with purpose. And it had all started with a simple choice to do the right thing when it would have been so much easier to do wrong. Catherine walked between them, one arm around each. "You know what the best part is?" she asked. They looked at her curiously. "In a few years, you two are going to be successful, accomplished adults. And somewhere in this city, there will be another kid in trouble, another young person who needs a chance. And you'll be the ones to give it to them. That's Eleanor's true legacy. Not the money, not the buildings, but this unbroken chain of people helping people." The twins understood then that their story wasn't really about a lost wallet or a billionaire's generosity. It was about the power of integrity to transform lives, about how one good decision could create ripples that changed the world. They had been tested in their darkest moment and had passed that test. Now they were being given the chance to become the kind of people who could offer that same test to others, who could be the Catherine Westbrook in someone else's story. 2 years later, Marcus graduated at the top of his class and headed to Harvard to study business and social policy. Maya accepted a full scholarship to Columbia to study journalism, with plans to focus on social justice issues. At their graduation party, Catherine gave them each a gift, a beautifully bound journal. Inside the front cover of each, she had written the same message: to Marcus, Maya, who taught me that Eleanor's lesson still holds true. Character is everything. Now go into the world and prove it to others. With love and pride, Catherine. The twins hugged her tightly, this woman who had become more than a benefactor, more than a mentor. She had become family. We won't forget where we came from, Maya promised. Or who helped us, Marcus added. Catherine smiled through her tears. I know you won't. But more importantly, you won't forget who you are. You're the kids who returned the wallet. Everything else is just details. Years later, when Marcus opened a non-profit dedicated to helping homeless youth find housing and education, and when Maya won a Pulitzer Prize for her investigative series on poverty in America, they would both trace everything back to that rainy night on Fifth Avenue. They would remember being cold and hungry and desperate, holding a wallet full of money, and choosing integrity over survival. They would remember Catherine Westbrook opening her door, her heart, and her life to two strangers simply because they did the right thing. And they would remember Eleanor Montgomery, a woman they never met but whose kindness had created a legacy that spanned generations. Because that's what integrity does. It creates legacies. It builds futures. It changes the world, one honest choice at a time. Marcus and Maya had learned that lesson the hard way, and they spent the rest of their lives making sure others learned it too. The wallet had been returned. But what they received in exchange was immeasurable: a future, a family, and a purpose that would guide them for the rest of their lives. The story that started with two homeless teenagers making an impossible choice ended with two successful adults dedicating their lives to helping others make that same choice. Catherine was right. Kindness does create ripples. And those ripples, once started, never truly stop. They just keep expanding, touching more lives, creating more opportunities, proving again and again that integrity, character, and goodness are the most valuable currencies in the world. More valuable than money. More powerful than privilege. More lasting than any material wealth. And somewhere in the city, another wallet waited to be found, another test waited to be given, another chain of kindness waited to begin.